Hello everybody, this is FC7, and today I'm continuing my playthrough of classic EverQuest quests. This time it is the Necromancer Epic 1.5 Soulwhipser. So the only thing I can really say about this quest before you start is to have your Blacksmith skill up to at least 100, which should be easy. And here's the Soulwhipser and the stats on it. So it all begins in Lake Rathetear with Kazen. This is actually the last step to my pre-quest video, so it's the last step on the pre-quest, and you get the note to Biddliss. If you have the 1.0, just hail Kazen and you should get the note as well. So just hand in the note in Steamfont. The coordinates are on the screen. So when you hand it in, you should receive a Gleeman ore satchel. It's a 4-slot container. So there it is on the screen, 4 slots. So now that I have the container, I'm on to Torg mines. This is in the Legacy of Yukasha expansion, and you need to find 4 gleaming Zraxthril ores, and the mobs that they come from are on the screen. I've had luck finding them from the blood guards here by the bridge. So after doing this quest a couple times, I found that around this area and this type of mob will drop them. But apparently, from what's known, they can drop from different mobs too. I just clear out the zone, but I'm doing this as a higher level than the quest recommends, so it's probably easier for me. I'm doing this with a level 85 heroic, and I have some alts helping. So there's a second one, and the third and fourth are right here. And as you can see, they just drop from the blood guards, at least for me. So take those 4 and combine them in the satchel. When you do the combine, it creates a sealed ore satchel. And the total time it took me to find these 4, it was about maybe an hour clearing the zone, but for a lower level or somebody on progression it might take a little bit longer. So you go back to Biddliss and you churn in the satchel, and in return you get Biddliss's research tools. So those are the tools right there. So he will despawn, and you need to go back to Kazen in Lake Rathetear. So there's Kazen. Just hand in the research tools. And in return, he will give you a drawing of Rune. So that's it right there on the screen. And you need to go to the Plane of Knowledge and hand it to an NPC named Ruandia. Or Ruandia. So that's the location of Ruandia. Hand in the drawing of Rune. And you will receive Ruandia's instructions. And you need to take it to an NPC that is right in Plane of Knowledge, so you don't have to switch zones with this turn-in. So this step, I will show you the location from Ruandia. You need to find Tebarin in the Necromancer's Guild, and the coordinates are on the screen. But I'll just run there to make it easier. So it's right across the zone. It's between the Painil and over there stones. So it's just in this area right here. So after you hand in Ruandia's instructions, he's going to hand back an intricately carved box. It's a 4-slot container. So the next step takes place in either the hole or Vegarlson, the Earthland Badlands. And you'll need to find elemental clay, balls of elemental clay. You'll need 2 of them, and I found that they drop from the mobs that look like magician pets, the earth pet. So the ones that are in here, this is a fantastic spot to get them. So I'm using my mage, and I'm just going to gather up as many as possible here and just use a beam spell. And this whole step took me maybe 5 minutes. But again, depending on what level you are, this could take a lot longer and if you have help or not. So just get rid of these guys and get the 2 balls of elemental clay. And on here I just had they're also sellable in the bazaar if you can find them there, but the person that was selling them today was just, the price was outrageous, so I would not recommend buying them from the bazaar. So then combine the 2 in the box and receive a seal intricately carved box. So he will give it back after you turn it in, and you will also receive strange smelling oil. And what you need to do next is go to the ruins of Old Painil, the hole. And this is where you need to find an old gargoyle. And he will drop the ancient Tome of Lost Lore. So at this step, I would recommend having an alt with tracking ability, or maybe a guild member or somebody help with finding an old gargoyle, because as you can see, the ruins of Old Painil are kind of a complicated mess, as you can see on the map. But I've done this before, so I will show you exactly where I found an old gargoyle in the past, because I remember exactly the area where he spawns. So you have to jump down from the entrance and go through this way. Yeah, when I did this quest the first time, I did not have an alt with tracking abilities, so I had to figure this all out on my own. So we just come down this way. And sometimes it takes a long time for an old gargoyle to spawn, and sometimes it's just up. So in my case, I was very, very lucky because an old gargoyle was right up to the left here. So he can spawn anywhere in that room area and on the top. So he's not just a static spawn that will always spawn in this spot. He will move around. It took me about 4 or 5 days, maybe even a week the first time I did this quest to get him to spawn, so I was very lucky this time. So I'll just hit him with darkness and wait for him to path down. So now just defeat him and loot the ancient Tome of Lost Lore. So we'll just defeat him. And you'll need to combine the tome and the oil in the box to create a protected tome. So, an old Gargoyle, Ancient Tome of Lost Lore. Just loot that and combine it. So it's a protected tome. And now we'll need to bring it back to Tebarin and Plane of Knowledge. So hand it in. You'll receive the brightly glowing tome. And then you need to hand it back. And then you will receive a Rune covered insert. And there's the Rune covered insert. Then you go through the text about the special box. And now you're on to the Plane of Nightmare, and you need to find Gnarled Wood. So I'm going to use my druid and track the mob that drops the Gnarled Wood. And it's the tree looking mobs. The mobs that look like trees. So that would be this guy right here. And this step took me a while too. The drop rate on these are not too high. Must be like in the 5 to 10% range. So I spent quite a bit of time here getting this. And now it's onto the Plane of Innovation, and this drop rate is probably even worse, so maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you won't. This step took me the longest in this playthrough. So this step involves finding a scrap collector and looting an Elaborite Hinge. And a scrap collector can spawn anywhere in the zone. Elaborite Hinge doesn't drop too often from him, so it's probably a rare drop off of him. So if you're a level 85 heroic like I'm using, what I do is just round up a lot of mobs at once and just throw down my damage over time orb. This was brutal when it was current content. I can speak from experience. I remember I had to run through the Plane of Innovation here with Invis on and feign death after I collected a lot of mobs that were after me and just solo these scrap collectors one by one. So now that I have the scrap collector down and I have the Elaborite Hinge, I can get out of here, so I'm going to just loot it quick. And it's on to the next step. So the next step requires you to have the blacksmithing skill up to at least 100. And then combine Gnarled Wood, Elaborite Hinge, and the Rune covered insert in a forge here. The only thing I can recommend if your blacksmithing skill is not up to 100 is just go to Crescent Reach and do the blacksmith quests. It'll get you up to 52, and then I just used banded cloaks up to 102. You can check EQ traders if you want to know the recipe to that. So after you create the glowing box of protection, you go back to Tebarin, and it's on to the next step. So we'll just hand that in. So give him the glowing box. And in return, he will give you a Paladin headhunting satchel. And this is the part of the quest where you have to go to each one of the Karanas and defeat a Paladin and loot their head. In this part, I really recommend having a tracker because you'll be out all day in the Karanas searching for these Paladins if you don't have a tracker. So here we are in North Karana, and I'm going to use my druid here and track the first Paladin. And there he is. You'll know that they're the ones you need because they will have the Sir in their name. So loot his head. And it's on to the next one in South Karana. Looking back in history when I did this quest, the very first time, around 2006 or 7, I had to aggro-kite these guys and just use one spell. Because they're so magic resistant, like they were resistant against poison, fire, disease, and the only thing that seemed to stick was Splurt. For people familiar with the Necromancer class, Splurt is a very long duration spell, so it took me maybe 40 minutes per Paladin, if not more, back in the day. Alright, so loot this head, and on to the next one. So 2 down, 2 to go. So on to West Karana. And there is this Paladin. And my druid can make short work of him. So we'll just kill him. Loot his head. And it's on to the next Paladin, which would be in the eastern plains of Karana. So EK, East Karana. I'll just track the last Paladin here. He's right over the hill. Right there. So after you loot all 4 heads, you have to combine them in the bag. Combine the heads in the satchel, and you will create a full Paladin headhunting satchel. So once that's created, give it back to Tebarin in the Plane of Knowledge, and you'll receive an Orb of Deathspeaking. If you can see on the right hand side, it popped in on my inventory window. It's the silver orb. You want to keep that with you. So now it is on to Natimbi, and you need to find an NPC named Whiahdi. She is undead in the middle of a group of undead, so you may have to do some clearing. So then you would just hail her and say what's on the bottom of the screen there, because I'm not saying that out loud. Make sure you have the Orb of Deathspeaking. Alright, and now it's on to Barindu, and if you just take the port in from Guildhall, it'll take you right to the spot you need to be. So you'll need to find a NPC named Tarlang, and his location is right across from where you port in. Right in this room. To the right, and he's right there. So then you hail, and then you ask what Meramite killed Whiahdi. And now it's on to Viraglug. He'll spawn at the coordinates on the screen. But it's not too far away. So I used my druid to track, but it really wasn't that necessary because he was in sight, right next to the cornfield. Right there. He has a mana drain and a damage over time AE. And he's pretty nasty. I remember when we attempted him back when this was current. I think we lost and then had to start over. So he won't start attacking until you hail him. So he'll be KOS, but he won't attack on sight unless you go up to him and hail. So then you need to loot Whiahdi's earthly possessions and bring them back to her. So it's back to Natimbi. Give her her earthly possessions back, and she will have some text up on the screen you need to go through. So just hand in the earthly possessions and then go through those 2 bluebirds. I think power is definitely the most important one because it spawns Tarlang. And Tarlang is the next NPC that we will need to defeat. So it's on to Noble's Causeway and the last fight, Tarlang. Coordinates are on the screen. So zoning in from Wall of Slaughter. Tarlang is right here. And again, just hail him and it'll start the event. He'll despawn and respawn as the raid encounter one. And there's some stats up on the screen. This is probably one of the hardest events back when this was current content, was Tarlang. I have an EverQuest Memories video about this event. If you want to check that out in my EverQuest Memory video section, I have a playlist on YouTube here. If you fail the event, you can just go back to Whiahdi and say the word power again, and it should reset the event, reset the flag. But I really didn't have any trouble with them, so I'm just going to loot the head and return it to Whiahdi. And that will be the end of the quest. So Tarlang's head, hand it in, and quest over. And I should be sharing my playthrough of the 2.0 here in a bit, maybe within the next week. So have a great day.